But the truth is that, we have this cultural belief system right now that every brand needs a figurehead. And so as a result of that, we've kind of mushed together the idea of company and founder. And we have this other kind of cultural belief system that's it's faster. It's easier and faster for a person to bond with a person.
Your business's success depends on relationships with customers, relationships with employees, and relationships with stakeholders. What do they all have in common? They're all human. It doesn't matter if your business is B2B or B2C, it's really H to H, human to human. Welcome to the Human Connection Podcast. I'm your host, Karl Pontau. Each week I'll bring you stories, insights, and practical advice from experts that you can apply to your growing company and daily life. This week I'm super excited to connect with Charlie Birch. She is a brand strategist and steward, founder of Humanize Collective, and creator of Brand IDQ. Raised by two workaholic entrepreneurs, Charlie saw early on that success built on inhumane, unsustainable operations comes at a cost, burnout, and integrity breaches. She chose a different path, one that uses well-being and integrity as core metrics of success. With a background in choreography, psychology, and somatic counseling, Charlie approaches branding as embodiment work, not just marketplace identity work. Her practice blends culture, collective consciousness, and individuation to help high-integrity founders scale their brands without compromising integrity or diminishing their humanity. Through Humanize, she helps businesses transition from founder-led hustle to team-driven growth, ensuring their brands grow up healthy and strong, make good life choices, and attract the right people into their orbit. Congrats on helping businesses build good life choices, and welcome to the Human Connection Podcast.
Thank you. Well, that was a bio I drafted specifically for you. Like, it's all true and it's all been used in different iterations, but that's the first time I've heard that exact bio read back to me. So thank you for having me. I'm really excited to be here.
Awesome. I appreciate the customized bio. I didn't know you were doing such customized work for those biographies. That's awesome. So I'd love to kick it off by just asking you a big question, which is, how can companies scale without compromising their integrity?
Big question, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I think, and this is something I've only really recently started talking about brand from an integrity perspective because I saw it not happening, right? Sometimes you have to see things done wrong so many times before you can kind of start to identify the pattern. And I'll back into it by saying that I think a lot of people have this idea that integrity is kind of this like crunchy, feel good, soft skill kind of thing. But if you look at it from a structural perspective, right? If we look at like structural integrity, without structural integrity, you literally have no leg to stand on, right? And so while I am talking very much about humanity and all of these feel-good things, when I'm talking about integrity, I'm really talking about, do you understand the pieces of your brand well enough to know and see when you have drifted, right? So it's not like, oh, I just want to feel like a good person in my brand, which of course I would like everybody to enjoy living inside of their brand, but it's really more from an engineering perspective. Did you engineer a brand? Do you know what it is? Is it differentiated enough from the founder for other people on the team to embody and express it authentically? Or is the second that you delegate that brand, it's a breach of authenticity, right? And how does that impact the integrity of the brand? Are you deploying strategies that make sense, that feel organic and native and align with your objectives? Or are you deploying strategies that are just being, rapid fire at you from the platforms who have no vested interest in your success? So, I mean, I could go on and on and on, but I think the most important thing for people to understand is when I'm talking about brand integrity, I'm really not talking about this feel good thing. I'm talking about literally the structural integrity of your brand and the structural integrity of your business. And does your marketing actually match the experience that the customer is going to have? Does it match the experience that the team is having? Because if those human experiences don't line up, you have a serious problem.
Yeah, I think there's a big disconnect these days with what a lot of what companies say they stand for and the way they actually go about doing business so the experience that their clients and their employees actually have compared to what it says on the website or in their marketing content is drastically different, and that misalignment again leads to those cracks in their integrity of the business, and it makes it a lot harder and often impossible for them to grow the way they want to, because not the reality of the way they do business is not what they're presenting to people.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And so it also just seems like, I think you mentioned some earlier that stood out to me, was once the brand is no longer, like if you remove the founder, like for a startup, there's always like, at the beginning, it's really about the leadership team because they're the business at that point. But if they're trying to scale, as you get to a certain point, they have to take a step back and be more of the leadership role instead of everyone doing everything behind the business. And so I can see that being an interesting challenge for a lot of startups that need to grow rapidly to meet their growth goals, especially if they have outside investors and stuff. But that taking for the founder to take that backseat and not have the entire brand fall apart seems like a very interesting challenge that I doubt many startups handle well the first time. So do you have any experience of like working in that sort of situation and how you help them?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's one of the things I love. Now, I have 2 young kids at home, so I'm up to my eyeballs in like early parenthood. So parenting metaphors come very rapidly and easily to me right at this particular moment in time. But my brand philosophy and orientation is rooted in Jungian depth psychology. And in that world, there's this concept of individuation, right? Which you mentioned in the bio, which is not the same as, individual, but it's related. So the individuation in a classic sense is the process of a child differentiating from the parent. They're of the parent, but they're not the parent, right? And that's the same thing is true with the founder and the brand. And this gets especially muddled right now because of social platforms favoring personal accounts, which we could get into like why that is, and people can get addicted to social media and companies can't, right? So there's all kinds of reasons for that. But the truth is that, we have this cultural belief system right now that every brand needs a figurehead. And so as a result of that, we've kind of mushed together the idea of company and founder, and we have this other kind of cultural belief system that's it's faster. It's easier and faster for a person to bond with a person. That is true, right? That is absolutely true. And the reason that is true is that there's a dynamic reality of a human. There's a wholeness of a human that kind of comes ready out of the box, right? It's been working its way out since birth, and now we're 20 something, 30 something. It's already tested and it knows how to handle itself. And the problem with skipping that with a brand and just banking on the founder is that the second that the founder needs to say, outsource their writing to stay engaged on a social platform, or outsource the design if they've been doing their design work, which is a big one for me because I'm a designer. Like there are these places where it spins back, and either you lose the essence, you lose the clarity, or you become a bottleneck, right? Or you create this situation where the expectation of the audience is unlimited access to the founder, which is not sustainable, not realistic. And also like people deserve some privacy, right? Like I've always struggled with the idea of building a personal brand. I don't really want to have like an Instagram style personal brand. But when my kids were born, my husband doesn't do social media at all. And he was like, our kids are not going to be on social. Okay. So even if I wanted to really bank on, it would immediately be inauthentic for me to have this personal brand, right? So like I kind of backed up into this conversation, but I see with my clients, like I have one client who runs a psychotherapy practice here in my local community, and it's built around her name. It's her name and associates, right? But she has associates. And now as we're trying to create a second location for her, figure out how do we attract more clients and not just bank on referrals, there's this conversation of, well, like sort of all the therapists always had their own referral networks and it was all kind of just like happening. But now that she wants this more consistent growth, how do we get all the therapists to understand the expectations set by her brand, embody those expectations, and show up? And I think that's where brand gets misunderstood as this subset of marketing, this thing you can like layer on top of your marketing to, you know, magnetize the right people or project the right level of quality. But really, it's above marketing. And you and I talked about this a little bit the other day in our initial conversation of brand informs marketing. Brand informs customer experience. Brand informs operational design and culture. It informs hiring decisions, because the real purpose of brand is to set, meet, and exceed expectations in a consistent fashion, right? And if the founder is the only one who knows like the magic pixie dust of how to do that, there's an immediate ceiling on growth. There just is. And we see that all the time. I mean, there's a lot of anxiety in the startup, like in the tech startup world, the VC startup world, especially, which is admittedly not my specific area of expertise, but I see this anxiety of like, I'm a bootstrapper. The anxiety of bootstrapping or a VC is like a lot of it's, well, I don't want to lose control. I don't want to lose control. But I feel like, you know, you don't really have control if you have to be doing everything in order for, right? And a lot of times the reason that outside influence is so threatening is because there's not anything actually tangible there to push back against that and say, no, we have a thing for that works. This is working. It's kind of this vague identity. And so again, if you have a really clear identity and integrity, and you can point to what's working and why it's working, there's less threat to, you know,
Yeah, I think
in and kind of throwing curveballs.
Yeah, I love that distinction, especially in the startup example where the founder they know themselves, or they think they know themselves, but if you ask them to actually put it down on paper, it's kind of like, oh, it's just, they have like vague feelings, but they can't really articulate it well. And it's like having the same sort of issue that a lot of companies have, where it's like someone is in charge of a task. There's no real process set for it, just the way this person done it, and that person leaves or is sick or whatever, and someone else tries to come in and do it and has no idea how to do it the proper way, because the way it was done was by a person. And so it can scale, or it can be easily like fixed because it was all person dependent. And so if your brand is founder dependent and the founder just kind of knows what's in their head but can't really articulate it, when you need to go and delegate things, like you said, or scale, it's impossible because no one else knows the founder as well as they do, because they're not in their own head. And so, and when I think that there is that threat, because that sense of threat, because the brand and the founder are so intertwined that they feel like, oh, if I let anyone else do anything, and I'm giving up myself.
Mm-hmm.
And so that is also super dangerous, not just from a business standpoint, but also from a personal standpoint, because they're too attached to the business. And so having doing a kind of surgical extraction of the brand from the founder in a way that gives it more integrity and more clearly defined parameters and processes and stuff, while it could be a little painful for the founder to go through, it's absolutely required and saves a ton of pain down the line, because now that the brand is not reliant on the founder, then there's a lot more that can be done to like delegate a lot of these tasks, and allows for the founder to again also have some more of their kind of personal life back, and not just be I don't feel like they're on stage or people have access to them all the time, which I think is a great point when it comes to the burnout issues. So I think it's an interesting connection between the brand side of things and how the brand allows for that integrity for the business to grow upon, but also how it's not just in the startup sense where that can happen, where any sort of small practice where it's the leader or the founder who's been doing all the stuff themselves, they have to get the brand surgically removed, which I know sounds more awkward than it needs to be, but I think it's a great metaphor, because there is going to be some pain involved, and there's going to be some recovery time for them, but I think it's absolutely necessary for growth.
Yeah. I mean, if you think like back to the parenting metaphor, like childbirth is painful, and so is sending your kid off to college, right? So is sending your kid off to college. But what's really painful is if they like keep coming home and they never really can take on that life of their own. And like that's what it's about, is can you, years ago, I had a really good friend of mine from high school, and we were both finishing our undergrad. And I drove up she went to Montclair State in northern New Jersey, and I'm down here in South Jersey. So I went to pick her up to come home for the summer after graduation, and her mom were having this power struggle about what she should do next. Her mom wanted her to go get her master's in teaching, like stay in school and do that fast track master's and get her master's in education and be a teacher. And she wanted to go move to New York and be an artist, a dance artist. And her mom was like, there's no security there. And so this is like when Bluetooth car speaker phones were like first a thing. So we're all three of us like on the phone together. And I know her mom really well, or knew her mom really well. I said, Miss Jackson, like, did you raise Joy right? Like, do you trust her to make that she's the one in her life that has all the information? And do you trust that you've instilled in her the same decision-making, value-making, meaning-making mechanisms that you're using? But she's the one that's in the life, right? And that totally applies to the business, because the idea that the founder knows the business better than anyone else is just a falsehood. They have one perspective on the business, and it's an intimate one for sure, but it has tons of blind spots, and it's not complete. The customer, I mean, the amount of founders who I talk to, business owners I talk to, have no clue what their customers think about their service. They think they're selling pineapples, and they're coming for, the ambient lighting. Like, just for stark example, that's not a real situation, but like I have a client who runs a restaurant, right? And he wants to attract, it's a Mexican restaurant, and they have understandably like a very Latin customer base. And he wants to expand the customer base to attract like more American customers. But there's not a single person in the restaurant that speaks English. And so I'm trying to get him to understand, like, yes, the food is really good, but you need to understand that when someone walks in the restaurant, your job is to make them feel comfortable and to have an experience that holds everybody that you want to attract. Because if you're blind to the fact, like if you're just paying attention to what you think you're selling, but you're not paying attention to the whole experience of the human that's buying that thing from you, you're gonna miss the mark. And you have to be able to step back, which is, you know, in every, I mean, you're a consultant. Like there's so much value in just getting an outside perspective on your business. Like I don't care what the actual service wrapped up in. I'm not, you know, 75% of the value I bring my clients is an outside perspective that's more aligned with a potential new customer who has no idea what they're supposed to feel or think or see. You know, I actually try to ask the least amount of questions. Like, I don't really want to know what you think your business needs. Like, I want to go through your customer acquisition experience as if I found you in the wilds of the internet before I hear what you have to say, you know, because it's just not true that the founder has the most, and their stuff leaks in, you know, it leaks in and distorts the message, and the brand needs to be its own thing. Even like someone like Tony Robbins, who's like clearly the biggest, Oprah Winfrey, right? We don't get all of them. They don't give us all of that of them, and we make that okay. Like we kind of know that, but when it's a smaller business, people get upset when they have the expectation that they're going to get all of you and they don't. They get upset and they feel rejected and misled, and like it's hard to come back from that.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for connecting with me today, Charlie. If you enjoyed this episode of the Human Connection Podcast, please like, leave a review, and share it. If you'd like to connect with myself or Charlie, check out the links in the show notes. And remember, no matter if your business is B2B or B2C, it's really H to H, human to human. Happy connecting.